Excellent.
Sound good? Alrighty, just 1 second
Never
for me.
used this Riverside, so
Yeah, it's pretty easy. I mean, besides everything you had to deal with, it's easy for me now that I know what I'm doing.
yeah. Yeah. Now that I'm here, it's fine. Let me actually put everything on Do Not Disturb on
Yeah,
my end, so
perfect. No problem.
I don't we don't get phone not working. Yeah, that's fine. Hello. God, my hair is so frizzy looking. Anyway,
We good? We're set?
yes.
Beautiful. Jennifer, say hello for us. Say hello.
Hi, Michael, and
Oh,
hi,
what a
everybody.
beautiful, lovely Irish accent. Don't you know who it is already? That is Jennifer Muldowney, the Glam Reaper, and boy oh boy, isn't she glamorous? What's going on, Jennifer?
Oh God, I hate you for that.
You live up for the
Thank
name.
you.
You live up to it.
No more glamorous than the man in the moon. I can tell you, there's the glamour part of me. That's definitely, yeah, and especially if you know me very well, I'm no more glamorous. But anyway, yes, thankfully got given that lovely nickname by the British media when my first book came out. So, yeah, the Glam Reaper, it stuck. And
Yeah,
listen, I've got a podcast, the Glam Reaper podcast. It sticks. It's good. It's a
yeah.
great show name. It's great when I go on stage, you know.
It really
Although I do
is.
try and look.
I'm sure there's far worse things that we have been called as funeral directors, and the Glam Reaper is very fitting for someone like you. So I think it works out well for everything that you're doing for sure.
Yes, it definitely does. And do you know what's interesting is that there are some clients that I work for who so I'll be doing so I'm like a wedding planner but for funerals. And
Right.
so there are some clients that I'll work with and especially it is Pride Month, I guess, but especially with the LGBTQ community where when they find out because I go under Muldowney Memorials because it's a little bit more somber, it's a little bit more,
Yeah.
less sort of teasing kind of but
Right.
when they find out my nickname is the Glam Reaper, oh my God, they love it. They're just like, what? Oh my God, the Glam Reaper is doing this funeral. So yeah, it can have a bit of fun, but yeah,
It
it's good.
it does.
It's memorable.
It is, and I think it's good that you do it that way because it's fun for your clients to kind of see behind the scenes like, oh, she's the Glam Reaper, like that makes sense, but you have also the business side of things and you need to keep it professional too. So it's the way to kind of keep it both ways. And I like to think we're similar with that, like mortuary store, mortuary show, like that's meant to be a little bit of satire as well. And I think what we do is here to entertain and inform and kind of help our industry. And that's something that you have done for a long time now. You're most famous for all of your books and everything. And just give us a little bit about you. How did you become a
Yeah,
funeral director in the first place? Or not a funeral director, a funeral planner, or whatever you would like to,
yeah, that's
consultant.
okay. Yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How did that come to be, and where do you get this drive and this passion to help our beautiful industry?
Yeah. So it's actually not the first time I've gotten called a funeral director. So I get that a lot. And actually, especially when I started what I'm doing now in Ireland, that's immediately one of the biggest problems I had was that people didn't understand. They're like, but we know what a funeral director is. What are you?
Right,
You don't fit
right.
into a box.
Yeah.
And so the easiest way I say, so my business provides two services really, celebrants and memorial planners. And a
Yep.
celebrant is like a priest but not a priest, or a rabbi but not a rabbi, so somebody to MC a service,
Yeah.
officiate a service. And then the memorial planner is like a wedding planner but for funerals. So we're not licensed funeral directors. We still need funeral homes like yourselves. We still, we're advocates of the industry. We're all about dispelling myths and stuff that some people do have, honestly. And actually, I was only having a conversation with a funeral director last night where we were talking to a Joe Public
Mm-hmm.
about sort of what we do, and he had, like as they always do, had so many questions.
Sure.
But like you and me and our chat, me and this other funeral director were really approachable, and we're just like, yeah, ask us anything, ask us,
Go
because
for
people
it.
usually have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And so we actually, the funeral director I was with, it was kind of funny what he said. He was like, a family will come to me and they'll have a certain conversation with me, but then when I refer them to when I refer them to Jen, he said they'll tell her so much more, and they open up like a flower with her. He said
Interesting.
it's really interesting. He said we're technically, a funeral director is an event planner, of certain way
Yeah.
within their funeral home
Yeah.
and like a venue planner. And but he was like, there's just this different dynamic, and that when they're sitting in a funeral home, there's this certain way they act with the funeral director, but then when they meet with Jen, they're a totally different person, and she gets different stuff out of them. So it is really interesting, and I definitely think there's a need for both of us. But back to your question of how I got into this. So about 15 years ago, I was a wedding planner back in Ireland, and I had my own business, and it was fine. It suited my personality for sure.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately, two friends of mine passed away.
Oh, I'm
One was only
sorry.
23 and one was 28. And I
Goodness.
was in my 20s. And when you're in your 20s,
Jeez.
you're going to travel the world. You're going to see all these people. Like, you don't death does not even cross your mind
No.
unless it's an elderly, grandparent, or maybe somebody who's ill, right?
Right.
So for these two tragic things to happen just like that, I was floored. And I obviously was dealing with my own grief,
Sure.
and then I was dealing with my own mortality and being like, what the hell? And
That's a
and
lot.
then from an event planner's point of view, logistically, I was like, wait, wait. And I just thought to myself, well, this isn't what I want. So I'm going to go and plan my own, since I'm doing weddings. Like, why can't I go plan my own? So that was when I started to realize how in Ireland, we very much, it doesn't matter whether you're atheist or whatever you believe, we still took you to the local funeral director, whoever that was. There was no sort of price checking. There was no value checking, no quality checking.
Uh-huh.
Local funeral director and local church. Didn't matter what your religious beliefs were.
Yeah.
So I started kind of down this rabbit hole, and that's how my first book came out and how the Glam Reaper came to be.
Yeah.
And I started coming back and forth to the conventions that are happening over here. And then about 9 years ago, I decided to move fully over here, and Muldowney Memorials got born out of. My original business name was Farewell Funeral Planners, but Muldowney Memorials it evolved into that. And the Glam Reaper is the fun name, like that I use when I'm on stage, my podcast, stuff like that. But Muldowney Memorials is a bit warmer. It's,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, while some people might enjoy the Glam Reaper name and enjoy that aspect of, oh, the Glam Reaper, did my friend, my dad, my grandmother's funeral, whatever. Not everybody's going to love that.
No,
It's
no.
going to take a certain person. So, and I very, 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 very much wanted for me and my business to be seen as, we're not dancing on people's graves. This isn't just pure celebrations of life.
Yeah.
This is mourning a death in addition to celebrating the life that was lived.
Yeah.
And that life can be as short as 5 years. It can be as short as a couple of months, but there's still life that needs to be celebrated. And there's
Absolutely.
still an empty spot in all of our lives, or whoever's. So, and to me, it's that really fine line of getting that just right. I don't think any event planner can do it. I pride myself in that's the niche, or the niche, as you guys would say, that I have carved out for myself. So yeah, it's pretty special.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very special, and it's something that I don't know if it's a thing around us. So I'd be interested to see if that is something that becomes more and more prevalent, which I think, I mean, between you and I and everyone listening, I guess, I think
Yeah.
that is going to become a thing because that's what people want, is they
Yeah.
want to have a full service, and it doesn't need to
Yeah.
be the cookie cutter service like you saw back in Ireland or how it was
Yeah.
more so here 30 years ago. It's very different, and people want to celebrate it in different ways. So I'm assuming that's kind of what your role is. You're taking it away from, not away from, but you're adding on to the funeral home and saying these are the things that we
Exactly.
can do on top of. So tell us a little bit about how that process works with
Yeah.
the funeral home and what you do at Muldowney Memorials.
Yeah, so it's 100% working with funeral homes. And I was at one of the annual conventions, god, I think it's about 6 years ago now, maybe.
Uh-huh.
I was chatting to a journalist from the New York Times, and she was she'd been down on the expo floor, and she'd been talking to all the funeral directors and stuff. And I said to her, like, what's the prevalent message, or what are you hearing from people down there?
Yeah.
And at the time, I was actually working with an environmental cremation company that where that's what I was chatting with her about, that because I was like, are they into new methods of disposition, like what's going on here? And
Right.
I was actually kind of really surprised with what she said, which is, she said, they're all terrified event planners are going to take their jobs. And I was like, what? So
Yeah.
I think, so I would like to officially dispel that completely, because It is absolutely not that. No event planner I've even spoken with, to be honest, wants to even do what I do. Like, they're just, people are terrified of death and dying
It's
and
hard.
funerals, and they're not into it, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I even have event production companies who hire me to sort of come in and do, if they've been maybe a, like, you've got these amazing global fashion houses, and so they have a family event planner. But when somebody dies, the event planner will be like, okay, we need a specialist for this, and because it is a special, it's not like a baby shower, a bar mitzvah, a wedding. Like, it's a very different vibe.
Yes.
So there's always going to be a place for funeral directors and funeral homes. However, they have to move with the times. If you
Yeah.
want to stay in your little lane and only do your thing, then go for it. But you're going to be the Kodak, you're going to be the VHS, you're
You're
going
gonna
to
be
go out of
done.
date. And what you're going to then become is a disposal service, which is not what we want at all.
No.
So there's huge value in funeral directors, but we have to evolve. And if that means reaching out to your local event planner
Mhm.
and seeing if they're interested, or, I mean, I'm looking to expand state by state. I have I've gone into funeral homes and I've helped train up their staff in celebrant work so that they can do it in house, and in how they can at least start the event planning conversation and stuff. But it's like, having the chat with your local hotels and restaurants, because what I do is, it's rare that I'll do events within a funeral home and churches. Rare, not completely impossible, but rare. Usually I'm brought in by a funeral home or by a private client if they want to have something in their backyard, they want to have something on a yacht, they want to have something in a hotel, they want to have it
Unique.
in a theater, whatever it is. So it's
Yeah.
something a little bit different. And I honestly think that's the future, because, like, what I always go back to, when I'm talking about my celebrant work, where people are like, oh, but that just means, you're not religious, and no, and I'm like, no, I was raised Catholic and I still
Yeah.
identify as Catholic, but that doesn't mean I can't be a celebrant. And it doesn't mean
Right.
I personally want a celebrant at my own funeral. And that's how all my entire business, quite selfishly, of Mediva came from, is this is what I want. And I want to
Right.
celebrate at my funeral. The reason being is because then the service can be about me, which is all I really care about. It has to
Yeah.
all be about me. I don't want it to be about, I don't want it to be in a church, because I find most churches to be a bit cold and sort of, and I don't have a relationship with the church. So,
Uh-huh.
you know, and so I want it to be a celebrant who can invite my friends up to speak, who can play my favorite music, and who can have maybe a priest there, or the celebrant can say some of my favorite Catholic prayers.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't want religion. That's got nothing to do with it. It's that I don't want religion defining my final farewell. Because
Right.
at the end of the day, my final farewell should be all about Jennifer Muldowney and
Yeah.
not about the church. Why is it about the church? When you think about it, right? I don't know if you are religious,
I'm
but if you
Catholic,
go,
yeah.
okay,
Mhm.
so if you go to church on Sunday, I don't, but if you go to church, you go for church, you go for mass, right? You
Right.
go for that.
Yep.
However, if you go to a funeral, you're not going for the church, you're not going for the mass, you're going for that person.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
why does the church get to sort of define, control, especially because, to be honest, a lot of them took out eulogies even in Ireland, especially, and I know here a little bit. So it's not about saying aren't no religion, and it's not about saying aren't no funeral homes. It's about, guys, people are changing. We want different things. And so we all have to work together, and the church included, and funeral homes, both of those will become antiquated and will become extinct unless they change with the times. And
Yeah.
so I'm actually speaking at New York State annual convention this August, and I'll be
Nice.
talking about exactly this. And
Yeah.
it's, there are the funeral homes, the funeral directors and funeral homeowners who see I'm not saying it has to be me, but they see the light, and they're like, this is something that people want and people are asking us for. So instead of them going directly to Jen and we don't get any cut of the pie or whatever it is,
Right.
let's have them work through us and we hire Jen or whatever it might be, So,
Yes, that's very interesting, and there are a lot of points that I want to address. Let's see if I can get them all. One very kind of prevalent one. My brother just got married, which we talked about before we got on, and the priest at their wedding knew them like intimately, so he was able to make the whole ceremony about them, and
perfect.
everyone after mass was talking about it. They were like, that priest was unbelievable. He talked about Connor and Molly. Like he really knew them, and that's what we want. It's the same thing in the funeral side.
Yeah,
We want whoever is having the service to talk about that person that we loved so dearly that is no longer with us. So
yeah,
I'm totally with you. Totally agree. We need to make it about the person that is right there in front of us, or if it's the urn,
exactly.
whatever it is.
And even to just top up on that, because one of the things I get a lot is, oh, antiquated means church and means it. No.
Yeah,
My grandmother, for example, has passed away, God rest her soul, but
yeah,
there is no way I would have done anything else with her except have her buried and go to the local church.
right.
Absolutely. That is her to a T, exactly as you just said.
Yeah,
This is not about anti-religion or anti-anybody.
yeah,
It's about making everybody feel included. Like, it's about
yeah.
diversity across the board. Like, why does it just have to be the church? Can't everybody get their farewell that they want? So, yeah.
That's what it's all about, and that's our job. Whether it's a funeral planner or funeral director, that is our job to hear what the family has to say,
Yep.
understand that, and to act on it and do what
Yep.
we can to make it special for them. So tell us a little bit more about like how the process. So it seems like the funeral home will call you and say like, hey Jen, we have a family that would really like or benefit from your services. So what does your process look like? Do you sit down with the family and say, okay, what are we looking for? Or do you kind of have a questionnaire? Or what is it that you do that maybe some of our funeral directors could have some tips on that would help us from more of
Yeah.
a planning side of things?
100%. Well, the first thing is usually I'll have developed a relationship with the funeral home before that.
Right.
So I'll sit down, like, so if somebody, so say somebody listening, right, is like, oh my God, I really want Jen in Chicago. So
Yeah.
I would
Which I
meet
do.
with them. Everyone wants a bit of Jen. Glam Reaper 2.0. So, but that's, people will say, we want a bit of this. Okay, great. So what I would do is we sit down and we say, okay, well, what does your clientele look like? What are they looking for? And I would get to know you, your funeral home, and what you know them better than I do, right? And so from there, then we discuss sort of what your profit margins are and what you would hope to gain from this as well.
Yep.
Because so what I do is my team will act. We don't act. It, I have different agreements with different funeral homes, but we act as part of your funeral home. So we are almost one of the team.
An extension.
So it's
Yep.
not like, yeah, it's not like, although some funeral director or funeral homes just want to refer them to me, and then we take them as Muldowney Moore as clients and we give like a commission back or whatever. But most funeral homes want to kind of keep it as in-house as they can. And so
Yeah.
what they'll do is they'd refer the client to us once we've come up with an agreement. I'll sit with them as Cooney Funeral Home, whatever. I'll sit with them and sort of say, okay, what are we looking for here? We'll figure out the venue. And it's kind of similar to the
Arrangements.
yes,
Yeah.
an arrangement. It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's just I'm delving more, I guess, into the frillier side of things. I don't have to worry about disposition and licensing and all that sort of stuff. I'm
Yeah.
more concerned about, okay, well, what was their favorite venue? What was their favorite smell? What was their favorite music? And what's your budget?
Yeah.
Big one. But getting all of that, and then we do some research and we put together a proposal, and it encompasses both my fee, our fees, and also a profit margin for you guys. So
Yeah.
it's and they get presented that, and the billing all comes through the funeral home and everything like that. So and
Cool.
then there's, as I said, other ones who kind of are into the idea but really don't necessarily want to have massive input in it, and so that way they're just like, no, we feel it's cleaner, Jen, to just refer them straight to Muldowney Memorials. You completely take care of it, and then you look after us, you give us a kickback or whatever it might be.
Got it.
And that's the thing, like, I'm a big fan of, and I don't know how much of many of Joe Public sort of listen to this podcast, because I know in the Glam Reaper I have both funeral community and Joe Public,
Yeah.
and so, but for Joe Public, it's everyone should eat at the table, and most people are very aware that when you buy something, there's percentages added on and stuff, and the
Of
service
course.
fees, and that's one of my big things that I feel like the funeral community needs to start doing, instead of making their money on casket sales and sort of items, is valuing their services and
Service.
doing a service fee.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a consultancy fee, because that's effectively what you guys are,
That's where the
and then
value is.
Yes.
People don't see value in
No.
caskets anymore.
No.
They don't.
No.
It's
And
simple as
it's
that. So we have to
exactly.
perform a service that the family's going to love so they can say, this is why I paid you this amount of money, is
Yeah.
because I'm getting this in return, and
Yeah.
it's about me, it's about my family. And that's where people see
Exactly.
value now. It's totally
Yeah.
different merchandise, you know. I mean,
And
yeah,
people see value in different things. Like, for
true.
example, my best friend who's a funeral director, he does value the casket and he values, classical music and he values all this crap. And I'm like, I value the food and drink. The food and drink
Me
is
too.
food and drink that I always ate and drank in life because I will come back and haunt you guys. And there's certain songs I want played, whereas he wants classical music and he wants a string quartet. And I'm like, I don't know about any of that.
Pass.
Yeah. So it's like everyone values different things, and that's actually one of the things I taught him on our journey of talking to families about this, because you'll have a family that really values the casket and really
Right.
values the vault, and really that's important stuff to them.
Right.
And they'll put money on that, but they won't put money maybe on a venue or on food and drink. Some people don't have any food and drink at all.
Hmm.
For me, the Irish way to mourn was always
The
food and
Irish
drink.
Wakes, come on. I know them all too well.
And that's the thing. Like, effectively, what I'm doing now is just a modernized version of the wake, because I
Yeah.
am bringing, especially state by state, it's very different. Like in New York State, you're not allowed to have alcohol in a funeral home. So, like, that's another reason why my services then become popular, because
Right.
people choose a space, they can have food, they can have drink, and that's what a wake always was about. It was about being in the room with the body, mourning, grieving, celebrating,
Yeah.
laughter, crying, wailing, drinking.
Yeah, whatever you need, whatever kind of
Yeah,
works for you.
yeah,
Yeah, that's cool. And I'm wondering, so the majority of time are the funeral homes coming to you because the family's requesting something unique, or do they think, oh, this family might be good for Jen and Muldowney, or is it more like I try to recommend every family? So how does that sort of work, and what are the questions that you ask if, let's say, they don't have already kind of a preconceived idea of what they want? What are
yeah.
some of the questions that you ask the family that we could ask our families that'll
Mhm.
help us give a more personalized service to who we're serving?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. There's a couple of different answers to that, because it depends on the arranger. There's some arrangers
Oh,
out there that are just born salesmen, or
yeah,
saleswomen, and are just very naturally able to have that conversation and open people up like a
right.
flower.
Yeah,
There are other people who kind of need a script and are a bit sort of more closed.
yeah.
And so it depends on who I don't do a full. I do a training, a kind of a not a sales training, but like a training on what I do. And I do give some tips on sort of, it's asking the question.
Yeah.
It's asking questions. So, both as a celebrant and as a memorial planner, I ask questions that might sound a bit crazy. So for example, if I turned around to you and said, Michael, tell me about your mom,
Hmm.
you might be like, well, she's really nice. I love her.
She's a
And
sweetheart, I'll tell you.
yeah, yeah, there you go. She's really chatty. She's got brown hair. You
Do you know
described
her?
her.
Do you know Cindy?
Besties. We're besties. Um, and so it doesn't really give me a whole lot to go on. Whereas the questions, I have a list of questions, and it's silly things like, what's her favorite color?
Right.
What's her favorite drink? And
Hmm.
those questions, yes, there simple answers to them, and some families just give me the simple answers, and that's fine. That definitely helps. But sometimes, like for example, if you asked me what was my mum's favorite color, I would start laughing. I'd be like, well, red. My God, she always in red. Which I am in
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
but she was always in red, and it will immediately evoke a memory. And
Yeah.
so that's what those questions, they're very simple questions, but a lot of them, especially when asked in a group that are trying to come up with, okay, this Jennifer girl gave us these questions. What was mum's favorite color? Jesus, does anybody know? Oh my God, do you remember she used to always wear that blue dress? Yeah, maybe that was her favorite color.
Yeah.
People, it starts a conversation. Whereas if you just say an open ended, like, tell me about mom, it can be difficult, especially when the brain is going through grief, because the brain is in protective mode. You've just lost your most important person or somebody you really care about,
Yeah. Yeah.
and your brain is just like, no, we gotta protect. There's a lot going on here.
Bring it
Okay,
in. Yeah.
let's yeah, let's go back to what's the word, back to like cavewoman
Yeah.
era, but it goes into protect mode. And so getting that information is important. Also, the questions do help me when it comes to, which I'm a big fan of, with any funeral, and this can be done in a funeral home, it can be done in a church, kind of, it can be done in most spaces, evoking all five of the senses. So most people, will have sight. Okay, you might have beautiful flowers, smell, the flowers, but what was his favorite scent? Is
Yeah.
there a candle, maybe a tobacco candle, or maybe
Right.
could you spray her perfume on something, or
Uh-huh.
does that go? Just there's little things, but all five of the senses should be touched at some point.
I like that.
So I do think that that really helps us to grieve. Again, it's all about personalizing it to that person.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and then when it comes to sort of how like funeral homes will kind of bring me in, again, like when a funeral home reaches out to me, and of course, since COVID, the dawning of Zoom, which we are grateful for today, even though we're not
Yes.
Zooming collectively, but same, same but different. Immediately, I'll say, "Can you get me on a call with the family?" Even if the funeral director's already done his arrangement call and he has what, or she has what they think is the information,
Yeah.
I still like to connect with the family before I start looking at venues and stuff like that.
Definitely.
Because again, similar to what my funeral director friend last night just said, sometimes they do tell me things that they maybe don't tell you guys in that arrangement.
Right.
And I experienced that even with celebrant work. So like even with my celebrant stuff, in a funeral home, I've often gotten, well, why should we hire you, Jen, when we have Sarah the celebrant who does all of our work?
Mm-hmm.
If Sarah the celebrant is working for you, then great. However, what do you do when Sarah the celebrant is gone away for a month, or she's gone away for a weekend?
Yeah.
Who are you getting to replace her? With Muldowney Memorials, you're never going to have to worry about that. You will always have
Right.
somebody, whether it's me or whether it's one of my team, you'll have somebody who can replace them. And the other thing as well, and this is just back to what I was talking about, is that as a celebrant, so a funeral director has had this whole conversation with the family, and they've organized the entire funeral,
Mhm.
and the family have decided they want to celebrate. Great. So now I'm on the phone to the family, and we're talking through the service, and we're, okay, how are we going to make this beautiful, and blah blah blah. All of a sudden, because we have a different rapport, because we're talking about the service and we're talking about personalizing it, and this doubles up as both the event planner and the celebrant, but I'm just, to simplify it, we'll talk about celebrant. So I'm chatting with them, we're going through the service. You may have ticked in a sales training, and whatever document you have, that maybe you have a checklist of,
Yeah.
okay, did I offer them music, did I offer them catering, did I offer them boop, 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 boop. You've
Yep.
all your things, right?
Yep.
You may have done an A1 service, an A1 arrangement, amazing, and they may have turned down music and they may have turned down catering, say for example in this scenario.
Sure.
And suddenly I'm on the phone to them and I'm chatting, we're going through the service, and I might say to them, well, what was his favorite song? And they might say, oh, it was Bach. And I'd be like, oh, have you considered a string quartet for that? Oh God, I never even thought of that. I said, oh, okay, yeah. And oh yeah, well, Michael never told us that. He never offered us that. Now you could have done that. Absolutely. And this has happened. You could
Oh
have
yeah.
done that, but it goes over their head, because they're thinking, what basics do I have to get done? They're not thinking about everything, right? That's one example. And then the next one, as we get on further, okay, so at the end, I'm just going to say thank you everybody for coming, and we'll wrap it all up. And are you having a luncheon afterwards? Are you having like tea and biscuits in the
Yeah.
funeral home or something? And they're like, oh, that's a great idea. Oh, could we do that? Can we do that? Oh, that would be wonderful. I'm like, yes, you can do that. So then
Right.
I hang up the phone, I ring up and I say, Michael, get back onto them about music, and get back onto them about tea and sandwiches or whatever. So like, it's another additional training that my celebrants get, that looking for these sort of extra, and it's not add-on sales. I mean, it is,
Yeah.
but it's not. It's about giving that value to the family, that sometimes when they're in that arrangement, they're just so bombarded. They're like trying to protect, brain's trying to protect themselves from grief. They're
Right.
bombarded with all these questions and all, trying to get, oh my God, do we have their social security? And what about, oh my God, and we have to close that bank, and we have to do this, and we have to do all that,
Yeah.
that they don't hear the value and the things that you guys are providing. So, and
Ah.
so that can be, so I always not joke, but I always say that we're like a second wave of sales in some respects, because we
Right.
just add that those extra questions. And it's done in a very like, oh, have you thought of that? And they're like, and sometimes they'll be like, yeah, no, he offered us that and we don't want live music. Okay, no problem.
Fair.
But
I think asking those questions is the best way to get them just to open up a little bit too.
mm,
And if you kind of go through your paperwork, like you were saying, Jen, like A, B, C, D, like you got to get all your checks off on the death certificates, and you're just doing it robotically, it's hard to have that emotional connection with the family that we need to have in order for them to see value, in order for them to maybe be like, I want to do something more, I want to do something special, rather than just giving the bare minimum and then in 10 years your funeral home is only doing direct cremations and you're having no services and you're wondering why. Well, maybe it's
yeah,
because you're not putting in that just a little bit extra effort that it takes to set yourself and go above and beyond for the family. So I think
yeah,
that's something that you do really well, and that we can all kind of take a page out of your book and say, hey, there are things that we can do more than just, the bare bones. And I loved
yeah,
what you talked about, the five senses too. Now, sight, my bodies are, I mean, they're pristine. So I kid. But like the smell is
there
huge.
you go.
When a family brings in their own candle, or if we ask them if they
Mm,
want candles, like for example, my cousin passed away a few years ago, and my mom brought in all these candles into the funeral home, and I was like, wow, this is like so nice. And it doesn't smell like, I
yeah,
mean, the flowers sometimes, like we all know, it's not the best
yeah,
smell when you have competing flowers. But when you have like a nice candle in the room, or some, or an incense, or whatever that person
mm,
likes, especially if it has an emotional connection,
yeah,
that blows people out of the water. If you play
yeah,
their favorite song, that's something
mhm,
that you can do that's small too, that knocks their socks off. So these are
yeah.
things that we can all do as
So
directors and
easy,
planners.
so easy. And I will say this: it's it's easier, I think, for me and my team as well to develop that emotional connection, because while this is our day-to-day job, our day-to-day job is up and down. We're not a brick and mortar and stuff, so we don't
Yeah.
have, like, I do, and there is the what is it, the great resignation or whatever, the staff shortage that the funeral homes are having now.
Yep.
Because to be honest, ideally, if I was to do my ideal funeral home tomorrow, it would be nearly to have more staff dealing with less families, but giving that valued service, because
Yeah.
spending more time with them, because it's very easy for me to sit here and say, oh, don't go through a checklist and be robotic. But at the same time, when you're under pressure and there's three other families waiting and knocking on the door,
Yep. You're hitting
it's
it on
hard
the
not to be
head.
removed. So
It is
that's,
hard.
yeah, and I think funeral home owners, if there's any funeral home owners listening, is that something you unfortunately really need to address, is how under pressure are your staff, and is there ways that you can alleviate that, whether it's bringing in part-time or temp staff,
Yeah.
or outsourcing certain things like celebrant work, like maybe to funeral planners and event planners and stuff like that, because that is another bonus that I bring to a lot of the funeral homes. Is a funeral home usually is open 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 or 8 to 8 or whatever it might be, has their restricted hours. When I take on a client, we're pretty much 24/7, and that's our team just focus on that. And so, but that's now something the funeral home doesn't even have to worry about. So they can now move on to their next family that they're serving,
Right.
knowing that that family is being completely taken care of. So it's really just about thinking outside the box and almost going back to basics. I mean, and you guys are in marketing, but it's like,
Yeah.
I remember 15 years ago when I started this, like, I helped some funeral homes, when I was kind of trying to figure out where I fit I knew what I wanted to do and I was doing the funeral planning, but I wasn't always making money from it and stuff. So I'd supplement that with, I was doing social media for some funeral homes, some
Yeah.
marketing, working with this environmental cremation company, all these different things. And I learned so much from all of those. But like, yeah,
Yeah.
15 years ago, marketing for funeral homes, like,
It's very different.
videos, videography, like live streaming.
Yeah.
What? None of that was happening. So
No.
we've come on eons even since then, but we just have to keep doing it. And we almost nearly have
Yep.
to, every funeral director nearly needs to go back to business school and sort of start looking at the funeral home like a business, and not like a hobby, or not like a family business,
That's
or
a
not
huge
like,
thing for me.
yeah,
It's huge, and it's something that we try to say all the time. We are a family business, but we don't want to run it like a family business. We want to run it like a business,
yeah,
and we are a family.
yeah,
That does that make sense?
exactly.
And I think we all get caught up in that, and we want to help our family or help our friends, and that hits really close to home. And
Yeah.
it's something that I try to repeat off and off. And it's like, we're running a business. This isn't a family
Yeah.
business. This is a business,
Yeah.
and you have to be able to do that. You have to say, what is best for our funeral home? The best is to help our families, to get our name out there in front of people, to do whatever we can to set ourselves apart. Because once you do that, that's going to become a lifelong customer. A little joke there, but it's
No.
true. And
Yeah.
then they're going to recommend other people. And something that we do is like, we want you to have glowing reviews online. We want you to be in front of people. We
Yeah.
want you to have staff like you that says, hey, we provide the best service around, and there's no doubt. And I
Yeah.
think that was another really amazing point that a lot of us needed to hear from you, Jen, was that our funeral directors, they sometimes have to keep their nose down and just like
Yeah.
grind it, like, I have to get through this. So if you can find a way to either alleviate them so they can focus more on giving more value, or hire more people, or hire someone like you or whoever it
Mhm.
might be to help that family feel like that they are the most important, because
That's
that is
exactly it.
how you get
Yeah.
even more business, is
Yeah.
when they feel that special, like, this is about me, this is about my
Yeah.
family.
And when you think about it, because again, chatting with the funeral director friend last night, the two of us were saying, and I don't know if you feel this, but the families, they think they're the only ones that we're dealing with, because they're not
That's
even
what you
thinking
want.
about that other people grieving. So they sometimes, like, it can get really irritating, because you might be dealing with three other families, and yet they're
Right.
texting, screaming at you, being like,
Yes.
hello, can you
And
send
I'm
me
like,
this?
I get seven more of these going on, but they don't know. Like, and I don't
No,
blame them. It's not, it's like, that's it. But
exactly.
they have tunnel vision. They don't realize
Exactly.
that, and we have to
So
know that.
that's it. And so if the staff are dealing with 10 other families, then that's where you've got a problem, because the staff
Yeah.
are going to lose their shit, let's be honest.
Right.
We're not really like curse on this
No,
podcast.
you're good. And that's how we have so many funeral directors that are going elsewhere, are finding new
Yep.
positions, doing different things, or
Yep.
are
Burn
just getting
out.
burned out. And like, I've been there before. I've gone through it, and it is excruciating. So
Yeah.
we got to do things a little bit different. We have to
Yeah.
evolve, like we talked about at the beginning of the pod. We have to
Yeah.
evolve and to be better, or else our funeral homes will go by the wayside. So it's like, do you
Yeah.
want to be part of the future of the funeral industry and what happens in the future, or do you want to get left behind and stick with what you've been doing? I don't
The
know.
VHS.
I don't know. I don't know. What do you want? But yeah, that's really cool. Tell us a little bit. We've gone so into depth, and I love all that. Tell us a little bit more about your novel side of thing, your book sides of thing, and
Oh, yeah.
um, a little bit about that, because I know we have a lot of readers of your books on our pod that listen. So tell us, like, maybe some secrets. Like, how did you come
Yes.
up with these? What'd you do? How'd you make them so great?
Well, the first one, I'd laugh, because I mean, talk about, I picked a niche within a niche. Like, so I chose funeral planning as Say Farewell Your Way, a funeral planning guide for Ireland. So I chose a niche in the smallest country in the world.
Niche,
So
niche, 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 niche.
needless to say, it
All
didn't
the way
become a
down.
bestseller, but it sold well enough for me. And then my
Good.
second book is sort of just it's more of a twist on that first book, and it's actually to say farewell the Irish way, no matter where you are in the world. So it's
Mm,
going through, it's very similar to the first one, except that rather than be for people in Ireland, it's for the diaspora, like myself, who are living abroad, and
sure.
maybe, will die here one day, and what will happen, and so what does that look like? Repatriation, is that worth it? How can you make your funeral more Irish, things like that. And then there's a little bit of myth and folklore and stuff in there as well. We
I
talk
need
about
to
the fact
have that in my arrangements office with me.
yeah. Well, we're doing so actually this is a bit of I haven't told anybody this. um
Oh, sneak
yes,
preview on the Mortuary Show. Watch out.
I'm actually thinking, so my first book's anniversary, 10-year anniversary, is this month.
Okay.
And so I have decided that in September, I think, I'm just trying to work out, because I know the annual convention is around then, and I also
Yeah.
have to go home to Ireland. But in September, I'm going to actually have a birthday slash launch of my fourth book, is what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Amazing.
So I'm going to have copies of all the books there. And so my fourth one that
Fun.
I'm writing, the third one actually was just a memorial journal. So it's sort of it's something that was born out of me working with families and being wanting to gift them something that meant something. And so it's really just a journal that people can use. There's quotes in it that can inspire
Yeah.
them or not. And like, even I think the 52nd quote, I think the last quote in the book is grief fucking sucks, is
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. It
Because
does.
it's a real, yeah, exactly, it does.
Let's be real,
And
right?
there's nobody who says, yay, grief, love it,
Oh,
woo.
no one.
So yeah, so it's just a real journal. And then the fourth one is I'm interested in that. I'm looking for a publisher, so I haven't got that sorted yet, but hopefully soon. So that is actually totally different to the other three, insofar as it's still talking about death and dying, but it's actually a coaching book. So I firmly believe, at 41 years of age, I firmly believe that the more we accept that life is finite, the more we will live and love. And I genuinely believe that. I
Whoa,
think,
that is
yeah,
nice and deep. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah. So it's a coaching book. There's some death meditations in there.
Ah,
Writing your own funeral plan, writing your own eulogy. All of these things just help you to, like, I've done it myself. If you sit down and write your own eulogy, you really start to go, oh my God, where are the holes in my life? What do I
right.
actually care about? Yeah.
Yeah.